We love the PortFast feature when it comes to our spanning tree protocol configuration. By enabling PortFast on a port, that's going to allow us to connect an end-user device like a laptop into a switch port and not have to wait through the default 30-second delay, 15 seconds for listening and 15 seconds for learning. Oh, by the way, we don't have to wait through the 20 seconds of blocking when we plug into a previously empty port, because it was not blocking to start with, so we don't have to stay in blocking for 20 seconds, but it does give us a 30-second delay when we plug in a laptop. However, by enabling PortFast on that port, we're giving our solemn vow to the switch port saying, I promise I will not plug anything into you other than an end-user device, which could not possibly cause a layer 2 loop. And in response to our promise, that switch port allows a newly attached device to immediately go in to the forwarding state. However, let's say that we enabled a port for PortFast and we forgot about it, and we accidentally plugged in a switch to that port. What's going to happen then? Well, it's possible that we could have, very briefly, a layer 2 loop, and we don't want that. So Cisco's recommendation is, on a PortFast port, let's enable a feature called BPDU Guard. BPDU Guard is going to react if a BPDU, a Bridge Protocol Data Unit, is ever seen on a port which is configured for PortFast. Because that should not happen. If we're configured for PortFast, we're promising the switch that we're not going to plug another switch into it. And if we do plug another switch into it, it's going to be sending a BPDU, and we know something is up. So BPDU Guard will protect us from that. Cisco's recommendation is enable it on all PortFast ports. And we can enable this ourselves on individual ports, or we have the option of enabling it globally. And when I say globally, I mean that we can enable it on all ports configured for PortFast. And with BPDU Guard enabled, what if somebody does plug a switch into a port configured for PortFast? Well, that port is going to go into an error disable state, which is going to prevent that layer 2 loop. For example, let's say that we're plugging in switch 5 into a switch 4 port, which was configured previously for PortFast. Maybe we just forgot that we did that. Well, as soon as that BPDU from switch 5 goes into switch 4, if interface gig 0/2 on switch 4 is enabled for BPDU Guard, it's going to see that, and it's going to say, I'm going into an error disable state because I received a BPDU on a port that was enabled for PortFast. And I'm going to stay in that error disable state until the BPDUs stop. Now let's see how to configure this. If we want to configure this on an individual port, we could go into a specific interface. Here we're going into interface Fast Ethernet 1/0/1, and we can say for that port, spanning-tree BPDU Guard enable. However, if we want to enable this globally, where BPDU Guard is going to be applied to all ports configured for PortFast, we could say in global configuration mode, spanning-tree PortFast BPDU Guard default. And if we want to see if BPDU Guard has been globally enabled on a switch, we can give the command show spanning-tree summary, and if we see in the output that PortFast BPDU Guard default is enabled, we know that we have turned on the BPDU Guard feature for all PortFast ports.